Welcome to those of you logging in for our spring GREC LMS Network meeting. We're going to give everybody a couple of minutes to go ahead and get logged in. Also, I think we're scheduled to have a severe weather drill that's starting just any moment. So I may pause us for a couple of minutes and let that pass before we move on. I know we're on a tight agenda. Few little housekeeping issues right here at the beginning. We'll let everybody go ahead and get logged on. I know we've got quite a few joining live. We've got, I think, a large group gathering and broadcasting together. So I love to hear about that. And I know that so many schools have returned to in-person learning that they're going to plan on watching the recorded version at a later time. So we are going to be recording this meeting. It will be available for the next month for anybody to access if you need to step away or if there's a part that you need to come back to at a later time. Do want to remind everyone to make sure you sign in today. I'm going to drop that link in the chat. It's also linked on your agenda. So make sure that you sign in. That is how you will receive your credit or your certificate of attendance. Once we are done, it automatically populates to you from what you put on the sign-in sheet. We also, if you're tweeting throughout, please use our hashtag GRECLMS. And as always, we want to thank GREC for allowing us this opportunity, for hosting these sessions for all of the GREC librarians. And this year, for any librarian joining us statewide, they opened it up this year and we're super appreciative of that. Wonderful support staff of Bart Fleener and Dr. Dan Costello at GREC, as well as Amanda Turner, who is our phenomenal go-to behind the scenes that helps us get everything set up and ready for you guys for us to be able to hold these meetings this year and in past years, future years going forward. We do have a wonderful agenda set for today. There is a bit.ly link for that. If you, here it comes. I knew it was coming. Hopefully y'all can still hear me even with the announcements. We can keep moving along. The agenda link is there. You'll also see a link that if you need to ask questions throughout the presentation, you may pose it on that sheet. You can also always use the chat as we go along. As I mentioned, we've got a packed agenda full of wonderful speaking engagement opportunities that I'm super excited about. I'm sure most everybody is not new to Zoom, but if you are, I do recommend maybe switching to speaker view so that you can have whoever's speaking in the majority or the bigger portion of your screen. And then one thing we are going to ask participants to do today is to go ahead and rename yourself. This will help us when we move to the part of the agenda later discussing the new library standards in our grade level breakout groups. So if you've never done that, you will go to the participants tab at the bottom, find your name and hover over it. Once you hover over it, you will see more and then the option to rename. And if you will rename by just adding either an E in front of your name, if you would like to participate in the elementary group for K-5, an M if you want to participate in the middle school group for grades 6 through 8, or an H if you want to participate in the high school group for grades 9 through 12. All right, so we will ask everybody to go ahead and throughout the morning, I'll probably, if we have seconds, be able to let you guys know that we will be checking in on that and move into breakout groups later on in the agenda. So at this point in time, I'm going to turn it over to the co-facilitator of this network and also our Castle president, Sam Northern.
Thank you so much. I'm actually at the Bob Kirby Library in Bowling Green with some SCASL members, and so I'm in the other room just to reduce feedback. But I'd like to just thank Tara so much for all she does. They call me the co-coordinator, but I feel more like the fan. Like I'm like a fan of Tara more than I do anything. That's really great. But she has been amazing. And so I hope that you'll reach out to her and thank her for this wonderful year of networking, making it the best possible, even though it's been a challenge. I've really enjoyed and benefited, tremendously from these networks and just connecting with you. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to give you a few Castle updates that are kind of prevalent to now and coming up for spring and summer, trying to keep it kind of we have so many great sessions. And so first and foremost, you can get access to this slideshow. It's in the agenda. You can also see there's a bit.ly. The presentation I'm going to give you is going to be actually kind of an abridged version just for time. And I know there's other speakers who are going to be sharing about KBA and different things. And so you can access the full version at the link. Of course, if you follow Castle on social media, we have a great communications committee who posts all the things that we do, from our newsletters to registration for conferences. So be sure you are following us on Twitter and Facebook. Both are very active, and also the Mighty Network. So as you join Castle, there is a closed group social media that's easy to access, and information is on our website, and you can reach out to any of us, and all that's on castle.us. I hope all of you are members of Castle. I'm here with many SCASL members, but Castle is different than SCASL. So you could be a member of your district, but not a member of Castle. But we hope you're a member of both, because being a member of Castle is only $65 a year, which is pretty great, because you also get to be a part of KLA, the Library Association, which gives you reduced price for conferences for KLA and Castle. You get access to Kentucky Libraries, which is the publication that you can actually write for. They love to see your submissions and manuscripts. Getting access to different events that we've hosted throughout the year. We had a mid-autumn meeting with authors from KBA, a spring summit. And so it's easy to join. KLA has a brand new website. They offer POs now. We have many librarians who needed to use POs, myself included. And so KLA has made that happen so that your bookkeeper can submit a PO if you can use some of your funds through the school for PD that way. That is hyperlinked to join KLA and Castle. We've had a really great year of membership drives. We have Rhonda Bell as our membership chair. She has been doing a lot of fun activities on social media to kind of get people involved, and just not only to recruit members, but to kind of show what libraries are doing and what Castle is all about. And so April is School Library Month, which is the best month of the year, right? You know, you have so many things happening, and every day you can tweet or post something to show what you're doing in your library, and maybe just for you personally and professionally. And if you use the hashtag Castle Love, you'll be in for a drawing for $25 at the Castle store. This is given out every week. And so she just announced the winner from week 2. We'll have a winner from week 3 this weekend. And then you still have 2 more weeks in April. All you got to do is post for one of these activities. See, today's the 20th and it says, share your most used tech tip. So you can see, if you follow Castle on Twitter, they should have a post about that. If it's not there, then you can just look at the calendar and you can tag Castle and Castle Love and just share a tech tip you like. And then you'll be in the drawing for $25 to use at the Castle store for shirts, cups, anything like that. So this is on the Castle website in the presentation. So hopefully you'll tag Castle and our GREC network. Another benefit of joining Castle is that we've had a couple of pretty cool KBA summits this year. We've had KBA award-winning authors now. We have David Glenn Robb, who won for Paul Big and Small. He spoke at our spring summit. Hopefully you're aware of these type of events. If not, a great way to find out what's happening from Castle and probably your district like Scastle is to join the KYLMS listserv. There's so many great things to learn on that. It's like, I like the listserv and then I like Twitter. It's like the listserv is like my top because I know people are going to connect with me. They can share easily. So if you want to join the listserv, you can click the hyperlink and then you'll see the newsletters when they come out. You'll get information from Tara about advocacy and things happening at the national level through ALA. I mean, and you're not going to get overrun with emails. Like I might get 1 or 2 a day. It seems like people are pretty, aware of people's time. And so try to join that because I think it's just a great advocacy tool. It keeps me informed of what's going on. One thing to be informed about, and we'll get to talk about this later, is Kentucky Library Media Standards. We're looking at those being fully adopted next month. May the 4th be with us, right? I've been watching Mandalorian like crazy. Where have I been the past 2 years? But I've been binging Mandalorian, and so I'm on a big Star Wars binge. But James Allen can give you more information. He'll talk to your district. We're looking at a summer refresher where we're going to be really talking about library media standards, from having presentations and talks and roundtables. And so anything that you are interested in learning more about, reach out to us or James, and that's things that we can kind of compile to hopefully help you learn more about what's going on with the new standards. It's super exciting though that our first ever state library media standards are happening and they're being officially adopted. Speaking of professional development, we have Kentucky Library Connection still being offered through KET. It's super easy to get access to these webinars. There are articles to read. Even if you can't make a presentation, I'll just sign up for them and then I get the recording. I know there was one that was really great about copyright laws, and I don't know enough about copyright laws, and it's just like that field that's got like so much ambiguity to it. And so it was really great getting to watch that later on my own time. And so look on there, subscribe to their email list, and they'll let you know when there's really great events happening. And they'll even send you PD certificates. So if you're looking for PD hours and you talk with your administrators, maybe it'll help you. If not, it's something you can do just for some informal learning. But the best learning is going to be at Summer Refresher. Summer Refresher is July 13th, and it's going to be in person with a virtual track. This is in Bowling Green, Kentucky, which if you're a GREC region, you know where that is. And so we are here now with Scastle at the Bob Kirby branch. And if you can make in person, that is amazing. And so we'd love to have you here. There's also a virtual track. If you come in person, you can still find time to do the virtual presentations. We're going to hopefully have places and spaces where you can, if you need 30 minutes to look at a virtual training, if the room's too crowded or something, it might be a nice time for you to have a coffee break and then listen to a virtual presentation. I think it's going to be very exciting. It could be like the new way we do PDs, is having this hybrid format. You can go ahead and register. The PO option for registering is still in process. That's kind of what I'm waiting on, but there's no rush. Just save the date. Know that you are, we're interested in your proposals for presenting. If you'd like to present a virtual track, it's going to be short and sweet. You could, we're still talking about ideas, but you could pre-record a 30-minute presentation and submit it. And that way it's there for people. But, presenting in person, a good perk of presenting is that you get a discount on registration. And I know I'm talking a lot. So if you have questions, unmute and just say, Sam, and ask me questions. And I know Renee, our conference committee chair, and Sharon are on. I know they know a lot more than I do. They made this beautiful graphic. This graphic is linked in the presentation, and I can probably also put it in the chat box later once I get access to it. But you can see that you can contact Fred Tilsley, our treasurer, for POs. You can sign up to present. We're having an awards night at Pub Novo, and we're having an amazing keynote speaker and closing speaker. Any questions about that before we kind of move into our first session? This is the big thing here, Summer Refresher. I'm so excited it's going to be here in Bowling Green. As we go along today, if you have questions in the chat box, we'll be fielding those. Ask us anything. We have our conference committee that can also answer and provide feedback. Because I submit some things on listserv a lot, people ask me questions and then I have to ask Renee Hale questions. So she loves how I'm the middleman because I know nothing and she knows everything. So you can ask me and I'll ask her, or you can put it in the chat box and we'll both try to answer your question. But what better way to get 6 hours of PD with your colleagues in the field than summer refresher? And Bowling Green is wonderful. You have restaurants, you have the mall, you have so many things to go and do. We're going to make it a great time.
All right. So yes, and definitely a shout out to Renee Hale, Sharon McCubbins for serving as our Castle Summer Refresher co-chairs this year. It's a big undertaking, but again, guys, I'm telling you, Castle Summer Refresher is the PD. You do not want to miss it. It's guaranteed good stuff dedicated just to you guys as librarians, 6 hours of credit, plus all the extra networking and contacts that you will make statewide. So now I'm super excited for our next speakers. And I'm actually going to let Sam introduce them. He's been the one kind of that brought these ladies to our session today. He knew about them from his connections with social studies statewide. And we've got some great friends. You've probably seen their announcements about the new Bluegrass Bold coming across the listserv, and we get the opportunity to hear about it right from the authors today. So Sam, I'll let you give them a little bit of intro and about it, and we'll move right into it.
So excited to have these two authors, published authors of Bluegrass Bold. They have been a huge support to me in doing work with social studies at my school and providing resources to students and teachers with new Kentucky standards for social studies. And their book is simply beautiful. It's called Bluegrass Bold. I'm going to let them talk about it because they only have 30 minutes and I wish they had 3 hours. And so I'm going to let them tell a little bit about who they are. And, you know, their names are Carly and Maddie, and they are amazing people that they've already told me that, hey, if you want an author talk at your school and with your staff, reach out to them. I mean, I've already got them on my books for next year, so I hope they're ready. Let me introduce to you the authors of Bluegrass Bold, and let's welcome them to our GREC LMS Network.
You'd think that I don't use Zoom all day, every day. Hi, everybody. I'll introduce myself, then I'll allow Maddie to introduce herself. My name is Carly Muter-Tees. I am the Director of Curriculum Design for Gradient Learning. If you are familiar with Summit Learning, Gradient Learning is our parent organization. I know that Summit and Gradient are all over Kentucky. But before I joined that team, I taught high school in Lexington, Kentucky. I taught high school social studies. Maddie?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us. We're super excited to be here today. My name is Maddie Shepard. I am currently a deeper learning resource teacher in Jefferson County, Kentucky, here in Louisville. Before that, I was a classroom teacher in Shelby County. I've taught 2nd to 5th grade. Most of my time is in 4th and 5th grade, which is why I'm such a social studies fan. And then Carly and I served as leadership in the Kentucky Council for the Social Studies. Carly was the executive director and I was the president, and that's where we met. And that's where some of our work around broadening the voices that kids have access to and looking at Kentucky curriculum through an equity lens was something that we started to talk about, and that spurred this project. So again, thanks for having us, and we're happy to share it with you.
Yeah, so first question, and this will probably be the only time I'll pay attention to the chat because I get a little distracted. But I want everyone to think for a moment and share in the chat, if you feel so inclined, your response to this question. When I think about my Kentucky or other state, if you come from one of those lesser states, lesser 49, when I think about my Kentucky state history education, what do you think about? So give everyone a minute to add to the chat. Daniel Boone, Daniel Boone, Daniel Boone, Cumberland Gap, 4th grade. Yes, that definitely was both Maddie and my experience. Pioneer Day, you made candles. Henry Clay. Henry Clay lives a few blocks from me. So I think about Henry Clay on a daily basis. The Derby, we have different regions, Shaker Village, Salt Doe Geography. All of these are really fantastic responses, and please add them. I will definitely check them all out. But you all mentioned the same things that Maddie and I have spoken about when we've thought about our own Kentucky State history education. It was solely in the 4th grade. And mind you, I went to the University of Kentucky and got a history degree and an advanced history degree. Did no Kentucky history except for 4th grade. We learned the geography. So I saw some Doe geography maps. So we shared that experience. And likewise, as several of you all mentioned, when I think about traditional teaching of Kentucky history, I too think of Daniel Boone, and his name is on, a good number of things around the state. So Daniel Boone, the quote unquote pioneers who entered into Kentucky. And then also quite frequently, people mention Henry Clay. He's got a plaque at his estate that says he is Kentucky's favorite son. And in fact, on the Kentucky state flag, we have 2 men representing the pioneers and the statesmen that many associate with Boone and Henry Clay, even though they're not supposed to be either one of them. So in preparation for a presentation talking about this book, I also decided to do just a Google search, History of Kentucky, what comes up, and the things you all mentioned did.
Can I pause you,
yeah.
Carly? The slide deck isn't up. We're seeing a different screen.
Why didn't you tell me?
You were on such a roll. I didn't want to interrupt.
That's true. I was on my teacher role.
If you guys were, if this were Family Feud, you guys would have all done very well, because when we ask this question about what do you think about in regards to Kentucky history, these are really common answers. We would have even made it to the final round on Family Feud. And this is the type of realization that really spurred us to think about how do we make sure that when we ask our future students what they think about when they think of Kentucky, that the answers don't continue to be, the white men that helped to forge the state, because there were lots of other people and voices involved, and Kentucky's story is a lot bigger and a lot richer.
Maddie, thank you for saving me.
No problem.
But I'll show you that I did have slides prepared for this. Daniel Boone, the geography, Daniel Boone, Henry Clay, the Kentucky state flag, and Kentucky search. And you are seeing my slide deck, right? Nod, Maddie. Awesome. So as she said, you all hit the Family Feud of what people associate with Kentucky. However, and I'm going to ask Maddie to add a little bit here. I was a history teacher. I was passionate about history. And well into adulthood is when I was having these personal reckonings about how little I actually knew about the state I called home. And not only is history often not very diverse and inclusive, but Kentucky state history is a pretty guilty offender. So the questions we were asking ourselves as teachers, as educators, was where are the diverse voices, the perspectives, the connections to local communities, to the street names, the places we live around, where those histories live, and likewise leaders engaging in civic life. Maddie.
Yeah, we learn a whole lot about classic Kentucky, and we really were asking ourselves, where in the curriculum, where in a classroom might a learner learn about a Kentuckian that reminds them of them, or has had a similar experience, or grew up down the street or in the same county. So we wanted to bring Kentucky home to all Kentuckians, and show that that Kentucky looks like all Kentuckians. And so that was a big impetus for the project. And if you're in an elementary classroom or with elementary students, you know that a lot of our resources do make a minimal effort to broaden those voices. I remember looking through my social studies alive, preparing for a lesson, and there's a whole lot of information on our regions. There's a whole lot of information on Kentucky's role in the Civil War. My kids always remember that Kentuckians and Missourians were called border trash because we didn't take a side. But the wider story was often neglected. And if it did show up, it was like a little footnote at the bottom, or a picture on the corner of Mary Todd Lincoln. And her story was just told as it relates to Abe Lincoln. And so we wanted to broaden the stories that kids have access to, like I said, really bring it home to all Kentuckians.
Maddie, you want me to take this piece?
Sure.
Okay. So the way we framed it is, we have a problem and we have an opportunity here. One of our big opportunities in Kentucky is that in 2019, they passed the new social studies standards that incorporate Kentucky studies, Kentucky history, K through 12. So rather than Kentucky history living only in the 4th grade, it's now supposed to live all across students' learning experiences. The idea being that we should be connecting social studies and what's happening in the classroom to students' lived experiences. So there's a great opportunity in that. But we still have a problem. In addition to what we talked about our own educational experiences in Kentucky history, what results is thousands of Kentucky teachers who are left asking themselves questions. Who or what should we include? If we ourselves did not learn Kentucky history, how should we know who to include into those histories? What resources can we use? If Kentucky history is incorporated kindergarten through 12th grade, how do we find age-appropriate resources that are connecting to our curriculum that we can bring into the classroom? How do we include those voices? Is the last thing we want is for Kentucky to be a little sidebar in in students' learning experiences. That we want to make sure that we are centering these stories and including them in an authentic way and not as a cute aside. Then also something that is incredibly important to both Maddie and I is how are we using history to spur students to action? How do we help students see what they learn in the classroom as impacting and influencing how they participate in their communities? How can we help students see that they have a seat at the table and one that is of value and of worth? So here we are talking to you all about this now. Truly inspired by these words of Toni Morrison. If there's a book that you want to read, but it hasn't been written yet, then you must write it. So all of these questions were swirling in our heads, thinking about what we missed out in our own Kentucky studies. And Maddie and I embarked on writing a book to showcase the diverse women of Kentucky from the past and present, and demonstrate how they have had such a big influence in Kentucky then and now. So Maddie, I'll let you add something.
Oh, I was just going to say that while Kentucky is about, you know, our history is about pioneers and great statesmen and compromisers. We're not only that, we're not a monolith. And so we tried to make sure that we're telling everyone's stories, of course, the pioneers and the politicians, but also the butchers and the teachers and the hillbilly activists as well, because Kentucky is a diverse place with a rich history, and we wanted to make sure that other stories in addition to the pioneers and statesmen are known as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. So we have a few slides. We're going to walk you through some stories and talk about why we're showing them to you today. There's 36 stories in this book. And like Maddie said, you will see some of the traditional narratives woven throughout. Henry Clay gets mentioned. However, what we wanted to do is broaden that sense of what is the traditional narrative, as well as create a more complicated picture of that history. And I mean complicated in a good way. So the first story of the book, and I'm doing what I said I wouldn't, I'm looking at the chat. And as someone noted, beautiful portrait. We connected with some local Native American history groups to not only get images that are authentic, sketches of authentic Native American groups that lived in Kentucky, but then they also worked with us in crafting this story. We knew it was really important that we started the story of Kentucky with the first people who were here. So this story is meant to not only center Native Americans as the first Kentuckians, the original Kentuckians, but also specifically talk about women's roles in those societies and how valuable they were as a part of those cultural traditions. And yes, completely stunning picture. You'll see, so I guess we didn't say this at the beginning. We have 36 stories of women, more than 36 women, because some are capturing bigger populations. But each one is depicted by a different female Kentucky artist. So this one you see is Bret Hartsfield, and then this picture is by Kayla Lewis. So each one is a different artist. We really wanted to showcase the diverse artistry of Kentucky women, from veteran artists to student artists. We have a handful of high school students who participated in this project as well. This other story is one I wanted to emphasize to you all. This is the one that calls out Henry Clay and tells the story of an enslaved woman who sued him for her freedom. And again, she is not someone I learned about in my history books. I discovered her because I was walking at Henry Clay's estate and saw that she was mentioned in one of the plaques. And then I embarked on this inquiry to discover more about her because I found the story so inspiring. What you'll notice with these different stories, that we wanted it to be a diverse representation, again, of Kentucky history, and in backgrounds. So we have some stories that I think people on this call will see how it's positioned within the historical narrative. We framed it, however, around civic contribution. What did they do for themselves and for their community? Because we wanted to make sure that we had a diversity of voices, of identity, of historical era, of geographic location. That was definitely a really important part to make sure all of Kentucky was represented, as well as their contribution to their community, to the different issues that they're passionate about. So I'm gonna pass it off to Maddie after this story. I like to highlight Missouri because we have the Charlotte Dupuis, who connection to Henry Clay makes her well known. Martha Lane Collins is featured as well. Very well-known name. Missouri Suarez is, I would imagine few, if any, people on this call know who Missouri is. Missouri is a former DACA dreamer in Lexington who has written a couple op-eds at this point advocating for immigrants' rights. But the reason that we included her in this book is because she's actually a former student of mine when I taught high school. And she wasn't quite comfortable in advocacy spaces yet. But what I saw as a teacher and now a friend is the way that she took action in ways that impacted her, but then also impacted so many more people. And we wanted this book to be an inspiration for young people to also take action on the things that are important to them. And I'm noticing, Maddie, I talked too much because we're already almost near time, but I'm gonna pass it off to you now, so I apologize.
That's okay. I do this all the time. So like Carly said, there are some stories that you'll recognize, some women who are familiar, but probably some women with some lesser known stories. So this is one of my favorite.
Is she frozen for you all or just me?
Appalachian music.
She's in and out.
I'll give it a second and see if she. Hey, Maddie, you broke up when you were talking about Jean Ritchie.
Oh, sorry guys. I was on the move getting my charger. So Jean, just to reiterate quickly, Jean Ritchie is often referred to as the mother of folk because of her role in Kentucky Appalachian music and her skill with the dulcimer, which is a very Kentucky instrument. So we have musicians and statesmen or stateswomen. We have all kinds of stories to be told. Oh, I was on mute that whole time. We'll skip to the next story. Just
No, we heard you. We heard you.
Good.
We're good. Yeah.
You like flickered on mute.
Okay. This is one of my favorites. This is one of our stories that is one story, but involves several women, several Kentuckians. So this is the story of Ann Braden and Charlotte Wade, who together fought for equal housing rights in Kentucky and during the civil rights era. And so again, just reiterating that we want to tell stories that are complicated, that resonate with folks, and that really paint the rich history of Kentucky. And if we'll go one more slide, another favorite, Joan Robinette from Harlan County. Joan Robinette is the embodiment of the, we took on the big guy and we won. Joan Robinette noticed that lots of children in her community were becoming very sick, taught herself some basic chemistry, and then identified that there was a toxic waste issue in her town. She and some other concerned citizens went all the way to the Supreme Court to hold the corporations responsible, accountable for the damage they'd done to this area, and is one of my heroes for standing up for what's right, for rallying and organizing her community, for doing it all herself. And as you can see, this beautiful portrait, also done by another Kentucky artist, helps to show the story of Joan, but also show the beautiful Kentucky community that she set out to help throughout her story.
So in our last few minutes, I'm gonna quickly go through some other slides about the teacher resources. Like we said, we are both former classroom teachers and now support educators in Kentucky and beyond. So it was really important to us that we didn't just create a source that students can use, but that we help teachers and students use this book as the launch pad for further investigations. So if you go to the website bluegrassbold.com, you will find some resources that are aligned to the social studies standards around inquiry learning. Before I go to, I'll show you some pictures of it. We also included links to most of the sources that we use to write this book. so that teachers and students can use it to learn more about some of these amazing women that we profiled. So we wanted to make sure that those were available to people. But if you look at the inquiries, and again, aligned to the social studies standards, and they're also in Google Doc so that teachers can download them, make revisions, as well as change out the approach based upon their students' interests. So I'm going to talk through this one very quickly. One of the inquiry units allows teachers to take this book, the whole book, and have students read either all the stories or a subset of stories. And what they do is explore the ways in which women make history. So they investigate one of the activists. And I'll point out the way we use the term activist. I know that that's sometimes a charged term, but we used it intentionally because we want to have a new spin on that term. Is activist to us is someone who uses or supports strong action in support of or opposition of an issue. That it's not necessarily one end of the aisle, that you can be an activist around like in environmentalism, which one of our women was a botanist, and her activism had to do with cataloging plants that had not been cataloged before. So we organized the stories to have students investigate the different ways in which these women harnessed their passions and took action in order to support themselves and support their communities. And again, we have teacher resources as well as student handouts that are freely available and able for teachers to make modifications to allow them to incorporate it into their classroom based upon whatever circumstances they have. Likewise, there's lots of other sources that approach history and learning very similarly to us, who are really profiling the diverse voices. We hope that the structures we provide are also adapted so that teachers use them in different circumstances. It doesn't need to just be Bluegrass Bold, though we'd love that idea. We do hope that this model of learning is applied to other books as well. And at the end of both of the materials, we prompt teachers and students to think about what is something that is important to me and how can I take action to address this. So the expectation is, as we learn history, as we learn about different individuals and how they took action, then you too are going to have that opportunity to construct an action plan and implement it with your class. Maddie, that's you quickly, yeah.
Sure. So I'm a deeper learning teacher in Jefferson County, and when you first hear that, sometimes you might think, well, deeper learning means I understand something deeply, or I don't get it just procedurally or structurally. I really get something conceptually. And while it can mean that, what it really means is that the learning is deep to me. I own it. It's important to me. It's authentic to me. I care about it, and I want to do something with it. I want to apply it. And so this book and the resources online end with what I think is the strongest part of the curriculum materials, which it asks students to think about, what do I care about? How can I use the models of Kentuckians that came before me, who stood up for their communities, who made efforts to make their local, national, and global communities better? What do I care about? And how can I use my skills and passions and my learning to make my community better, to be an activist on an issue that I care about? And so our last piece here is about Georgia Davis Powers, who is another story that you might know, but you might not know, the whole story. And it's all about Georgia Davis Powers' activism as a woman of color, as a Kentuckian and a legislator. And so We have supporting questions to help lead students through the lesson as scaffolding, several organizational tasks and sources, and then again, leads to this taking informed action part, which to me is really what deepens the learning. Here you can see her full story, her portrait, again, which is done by a Kentucky artist, her contributions and her geography here in yellow. And these stories, we wanted to make sure that we talk about, of course, taking informed action, but bringing a large equity lens to a lot of our curriculum as well. This was an opportunity for us to present curriculum that looks like every learner, where they can see themselves and look at in a mirror, but also where learners can look through a window and see a Kentuckian that doesn't look like them, or that grew up in a different geography or different time period or different context, but still find that that same thread that binds us all together as Kentuckians, that our love for our community and our want to make it better and act on issues that we care about. So this curriculum is really about telling Kentucky's whole story, its complex story, but it's also about allowing learners to have a window and a mirror into stories that remind them of themselves, but also stories that don't. And so we can start to build empathy and really internalize and make deep Kentucky's whole story.
So to finish up, because I know we are at time, encourage everybody to reach out to us. I've shared my PowerPoint so you can access our email. Please visit the site to see all of the resources that we have provided there. Again, all open source. And we also encourage everybody to nominate a school or classroom to receive a classroom set. We had some very generous donations. So we are able to donate 4 classroom sets, 25 per set. So please nominate yourself, nominate your school, and just share these stories. That's our main driver. Please reach out to us if you would like us to talk more about these stories as well.
Yeah, thank you guys for your time. It's a pleasure to speak with you guys, and please email us, reach out, tweet at us with any questions or nominations or anything like that.
Yes, so thank you, Maddie and Carly, for the time you spent with us this morning, sharing this phenomenal resource. I mean, I can just see this being used in all grade levels, elementary, middle, and high, as a way to just really appreciate the stories of Kentucky women, and also celebrating the artists who have contributed. And so what is the deadline on that book giveaway nomination?
I think it's May 15th.
Okay.
We had put it at about a month since we opened it.
Awesome. So yes, so we've linked this slide deck onto the agenda. You also have contact information for Carly and Maddie. There's an informational flyer on the agenda, as well as the website. So thank you guys for joining us this morning. Now we're going to move right on into our Kentucky Bluegrass Awards updates with KBA co-chairs Beth Atkins and Renee Hale. We've got some very exciting time for KBA this time of year, because we've just announced winners. We've just rolled out new master lists. And so I'm going to turn it over to Beth and Renee about Kentucky Bluegrass Awards.
All right. Can you guys hear me?
We sure can.
Okay, good. I have a new camera and a new microphone, so I wanted to make sure that everything was working. All right. All right, like Tara said, I'm Beth Atkins. I am the KBA co-chair with Renee Hale, and we wanted to just take a minute to update you on some things about KBA. Our mission statement is listed at the beginning of each of our presentations. I feel like most of you are very familiar with KBA and its mission. Don't forget that you can connect with us online, Facebook and Twitter. You can email either one of us. We would be glad to answer any questions. Behind the scenes right now, Renee has worked on creating the graphics for our winners from each list, and our committees are already gearing up to start reading for next year's list. Okay, big change. Our dates to remember for KBA, our master lists are going to be released in March, starting next year. So we are hoping that this will allow our librarians to have time to spend that money before your PO cutoff date. So all of the dates have changed just a tiny bit. You'll see that voting is now from March to April 1st, and that we'll still announce winners in April. So just take note of those changes, and I have shared this presentation, so you'll be able to look back, and also Renee or myself, one, will make sure that we're sharing these things out on the listserv and on our social media platforms. Our grade level winners, we have some amazing titles that we had to vote from. It was very hard. I know for my students, we voted via Google Forms, and I had to really explain to my kindergarten students that we could only pick one. So it was great to have so many that they wanted to choose as their favorite. Master lists, like Tara said, our master lists are live, and I've linked them here. Also, Renee has created these graphics that show all of the titles for our master lists that were just released. This is something that I like to show my students, just to let them see the cover of the book before we delve in and start reading. There are some excellent titles on these lists as well. And I'm probably a little partial to the 6-8 list because I serve on that committee. So I think we have some really amazing books on this list as well. All right, suggesting a title. Even though we just released those master lists, we are starting the review process for our next list for next year. So if you would like to nominate a book, I've linked that here. You will go to Castle and click on Kentucky Bluegrass Awards, then KBA committees, and the nomination form is at the bottom of the page. So if you have a title that you would like to nominate, make sure you do that, and it will be reported to the chairs of whichever committee the title fits with. Okay, KBA needs you. All of our committees are always looking to add members. So if you are interested in joining one of these committees, preschool, K2, 3, 5, 6, 8, 9, 12, materials committee, I'm the chair for that. We're always looking for people to add items to our resource page. And if you create something, we would love for you to share it so that there's other librarians out there not reinventing the wheel when something has already been made by somebody else. Also, social media manager. So if you would like to apply for any of these committees, same thing, Castle website, KBA awards, the committees, and then the application is at the bottom of the page. And if you have questions about any of that, you can reach out to myself or Renee. Book grants, the application window will be open from May 1st to May 31st. We'll share it out on the listserv. It'll be on our Facebook page, on the Twitter pages. You will be able to find that. We will share it in multiple places. But if you apply for that book grant, you have to attend Summer Refresher in order to receive that grant. And if you're a virtual attendee winner, we'll try to find somebody to deliver your books to you. Renee or I1 will be able to work that out on getting them to you. But you must be attending either virtually or in person to get those books. Our contact information, Renee's email address, my email address. It gets kind of confusing because I go by my middle name, but my email address is different. So it's Maria instead of Beth. And then our KBA coordinator Gmail, we try to check that periodically. But the fastest way for myself and probably Renee too is sending a direct email to our school email account, because those are probably usually open. Mine's usually always open. All right. I think I flew through that. I am going to stop sharing my screen. and see if anybody has any questions or if Renee has anything else to add. Okay, I see she's put some stuff in the chat box here. I'm gonna look through that real quick.
He's just told everybody to be able to go ahead and take the graphics, use them however. And the big news is that if you're a member of the Kentucky School Consortium, that the 2021-2022 titles are already added. So that is wonderful news for everyone. And the fact with the new master list release date, hopefully everybody will be able to go ahead and get those orders in before PO deadlines. So reserve yourself just a small amount on next year's budget so you can go ahead and get ahead of the game and have those in before summer. We thank you, Renee and Beth, for taking on this role of KBA coordinators each year. Phenomenal program here in our state, and we always love seeing the books that each committee vets and puts out. Yeah, Permabound has already released their KBA deal for a reduced rate. I got that email yesterday, so definitely if you've got any funds to finish out for this year, I highly recommend that because everybody will start sharing the resources. Usually there's definitely KBA sessions during summer refresher you can gain insight and ready to go lessons and promotional materials from. So before we jump into our next session, just a reminder to everyone, I'm going to add in links to the agenda in the chat as well as a sign in. If you want your certificate for attending today emailed to you, you will need to sign in. Also, for those that might not have been on right at the beginning, we're asking everyone to kind of rename themselves and add either an E, an M, or an H to your name. And that's for when we get into our new standards breakout groups here in a little bit. If you would like to go into the elementary group, which will discuss the K2 and 3-5 standards work bands, put an E with your name. If you want to discuss the grades 6 through 8, put an M for middle school. And if you are high school, grades 9 through 12, please add an H. And we'll move right along to that. We'll go ahead and start getting people in those breakout rooms for when we hit that section. Next on our list, we always love it when we have our friends from KET join us, Kathy Davis and Amy Grant. They are always a wealth of information, resources galore, phenomenal professional learning opportunities. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Amy and Kathy.
Awesome, thank you. This is Amy. I think I will start. Let's see if I can get my screen shared. So Tara, just give me a good thumbs up or something if I'm good and you can see my screen.
You are good to go. We are seeing
Perfect. Perfect. Well, I won't spend a lot of time on this slide. You know, Sam mentioned at the beginning that this is, just the school library connection is a great place to just jump in and get PD, get some learning. They cover everything from just the basics. So if you're a first-year librarian who need to amp up some skills, or if you've been doing this a while and you just need a refresher on something, there really is something for everybody in here. And we've even advertised this to, English teachers, ELA teachers, because there's just a lot of good stuff in there, like the webinar that Sam was talking about on copyright. And that's all I'll say about this. Check it out. The username and password are on the screen. It's very easy to get to, and it's got lots of good stuff in here. And this slide on social studies shorts, I added in just because it paired so well with what the ladies were talking about earlier with Bluegrass Bold, which is phenomenal, guys. It's amazing. It's the first I've really seen in any depth, and I'm ready to go out and get it. But social studies shorts, and Kathy may want to jump in and share some more because she's actually on the team that has developed these short video clips that are all around social studies topics, particularly focused on social studies topics that directly tie to Kentucky. So you can see that the topics that are already out there that we have clips for, and these live in PBS Learning Media, by the way. And they're used, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, just a quick clip into social studies, whether it's Kentucky legislature, whether it's the U.S. Supreme Court, whether it's highlighting some of those famous women in Kentucky. You'll see some familiar faces from that Bluegrass Bold book as well. But then I think the plan, and Kathy, you can correct me, is to release a couple every month for the next few months. So the next clips that you'll find coming up are How a Bill Becomes a Law. They have one planned on Kentucky symbols. They've got a really good one coming up on news literacy. So you can see all of these within PBS Learning Media. And if I click this link, you can see that collection of social studies shorts also lives within that news quiz collection. So both really great clips to check out. And you can see everything in here. If you all are familiar with Learning Media, which you probably are, remember that everything in Learning Media, every resource also has other resources that go with it. So with each one of these social studies shorts, video clips, you also have support materials for teachers, which may include a quick activity that you can implement in your classroom. It may have discussion questions or handouts or vocabulary that you can use with your students. So really dive in, because there's a lot of good stuff within that social studies shorts collection. The next thing, Kathy, did you want to say anything else about the social studies shorts collection?
No, I mean, I think you covered it well. I think we have about 4 or 5. You mentioned most of those before the end of this school year. And I just want to say, like Amy said, the Bluegrass Bowl book is fabulous. We use that a lot in creating some of our content for Kentucky women. So yeah, check that out. That's a great book, and check out the shorts too. It's been a lot of fun.
I'm so jealous of Kathy getting to work on this, because it's so much fun, and you can tell how much fun they've had making them just by watching them. The next thing on the list, on our short list today, because I think we've talked to you all at all of the regional castle meetings, so we try not to overload you. We try to remember what we've shared before and not share the same thing every time. But we do want to mention again, I know we probably mentioned the Professional Development Multimedia Day that we have at KET each year. You know, last year, as with everybody, we turned the world upside down. And so we turned this event into a virtual event. It was really successful as a virtual event. You know, a lot of us who live far away from Lexington often can't make the trip. So having the virtual option really helped last year. This year, we're going to keep the virtual event. It's going to be virtual again. And you all know we've all sat through enough Zoom meetings that a 7 or 8 hour Zoom meeting is not ideal. So normally at KET, we just run a 1-day, full-day event. Since it's going to be at a virtual setting, we're actually splitting that day up into 4 different days. So you'll have 3 hours of available PD across on each of 4 different days. So July 14th, there will be 3 hours available. July 16th, there'll be 3 hours available, the 20th and the 22nd as well. Some of those topics are going to include things like, we're going to pull in people from the PBS NewsHour who do student reporting labs, who have some really excellent things to share, not only about the student reporting labs and how to get students into telling their story, but also doing that through a video format or possibly even a podcast format, how to share student stories done in a really high level, engaging way. So we're going to have the PBS Student Reporting Labs folks there. We have Sam is going to come and share his videography tools and best practices with us. We've got sessions on copyright and media literacy. We're going to have standards updates and lots more. We're working out the last few of those sessions currently, talking with presenters who will be available for those days. You can sign up for as much or as little of that PD as you would like, as that interests you, as that fits what you're looking for your learning this summer. And there's going to be, again, up to those 12 hours, 3 hours across each of the 4 days that are going to be available. So as soon as we get the last few of those presenters locked in soon, the registration will open. These slides that you have access to are linked to the website, and I'll click on that real quick so you can see it. Right now, it is still last year's presentation. So if you want to go back and look, all of those sessions are still available that you can see and take part in. And some of those are also on our KET YouTube page. But the same plan revolves again this year. We're going to record those sessions. They'll be available after the fact so that you can view those later. Kathy, let me know, did I miss anything else about Multimedia Day?
I think you covered it well, Amy.
Okay, I feel like I'm talking really fast and I end up skipping some things. But Kathy knows me well enough. She knows just cut me off and jump in at any point in time. The last thing I really have to share with you today is something new that we're doing. You know, I said that the multimedia event things were going up on our KET Education YouTube page. We're really starting to fill out that YouTube page. One of the things that we have been working on adding is a series of short video clips that are called Activate, and they are shorts for digital learning, which are essentially just quick lesson ideas in a video format. So let me back up a step. So the sheets that you see, the PBS Learning Media Plus Digital Tools sheets, we created back in the fall, back when that teacher stress level was at an all-time high. You know, we were all a little bit, you know, trying to tread water, keep our nose above the water, not even mouth above the water, just nose. We were just trying to survive. So we were trying to figure out a way to take what we were already using in the classroom and pair it with the good quality, available anywhere, available to access, no matter what that learning landscape looked like, resources in PBS Learning Media. And how can we weave those together to build engaging lessons with the tools we already know, with the tools our students are already familiar with, and at the same time sort of lessen that stress because it's something that flows easily together. And something that is not one more thing to learn at that point. So that's sort of the background of where this sheet came from, which is linked here. It's just a quick, here's a lesson I did. Oh, I'll have to fix that link in just a second. But it's just a, here's a quick way that you can use this tool with learning media resources. Here's how to use learning media with Canva. Here's how to use this learning media resource with Flipgrid. And it's just really quick examples of how to do that. And so this Activate series sort of stemmed from that idea. So they're really quick, about a minute and 15-second long videos that sort of take that idea in a step further. And so I think I'm going to try to, oh, I didn't link that either. I will have to fix the links on this page. So let me just go to youtube.com/KET education. And I'll see if I can play one of these for you and let me know if the sound comes up or not. Right now there's 5 in the series. There are more planned and more coming. Oh.
We're not getting the sound, Amy.
Not getting the sound?
Yeah.
Man, I do this every time. It's okay. They are about, again, a minute long. They're just really quick, and it shows you specific resources in learning media, and it pairs them to specific tools. So this one's all about, you know, if you're doing if your students are studying landscapes, or, you know, if they're looking into cave and karst, for example, and they're looking at not only the geography and the landscape, but how to the tourism aspects, or the, you know, geography, or the nature, or the animal impacts, or any of those things surrounding that. Here's how you use these specific resources in learning media. And here's how, a little quick intro of how this tool works. This one, Canva, for example. And here's a lesson that you can do. And they're really pretty wide open lessons so that you can really sort of take this big idea and bring it down to what you could do in your classroom. So Look, I can't do too many things at once. I need this to pause. Okay. All right. So there are lots of ideas and lots of specific learning media resources that ideas you can get from these video clips. All right. So let me get back to that slide. Again, there are 5 there available now. There are more planned and more coming. So check those out. I think they're also being shared across social media platforms. So I think I saw one on Facebook yesterday. I think they're going to be on Twitter, maybe Instagram, I'm not sure. But be sure to check those out as they are available. And so now I'm looking at the chat. I don't know if anybody answered you, Amanda. The KET Multimedia Days will be in the morning hours. Right, Brian? I say that now I'm second guessing myself.
That is correct. They will run from 9 to 12 each of those 4 mornings.
9 to 12
sessions.
Eastern
Time, 8 to 11 Central.
Yes.
And we hope to have the website and everything with registration and all that up within the next week or so.
Excellent. Any questions about anything? I know I rambled a little bit, but you guys know you can always reach out to Kathy or I if you need professional development, if you need workshops with students. However we can be of service, let us know.
We are always so appreciative of our partnerships with KET. And like I said, the amazing resources you provide us as librarians, our teachers, our learners, to facilitate that integrated learning throughout the year. And definitely appreciate you all being right there in the trenches with us. I will say a little plug here. Some of the best PD I could ever offer my teachers year in and year out came from inviting our KET consultants in, just letting them sit in the computer lab, dig around in those resources, explore and find out on their own what was there that they could be utilizing. So please reach out to Amy, to Kathy, and let them know, even if it's, a 1 hour faculty meeting, or if you're doing a blended PD day and letting teachers choose some professional growth areas, that being an option. I'm sure now in this day and age, we can facilitate virtual as well as in person, or them zooming in while some people are in person, and we can make all kinds of different things work to where we know we are getting those vetted best resources in our teachers' hands. So we definitely appreciate you guys. Thanks again for joining us. All right, we've got about 1 or 2 minutes ahead of schedule. If everybody wants to take just a quick stretch break, so we've been going about half of our allotted time so far. I will remind you, if you have not added either an E for elementary grades K-5, an M for middle school grades 6-8, or an H for high school grades 9-12 to your name, that will be our session following the next one, where we will go into breakout rooms. We've got 1 more speaker, and then we will be in that session. So go ahead and be naming yourselves. Take about a 1-minute stretch break, and then we'll come back and I will introduce our next speaker that I'm excited we have with us. All right, so our next part of the agenda and speaker is Adrienne Lane. She is the librarian at Central High School in Jefferson County Schools in Louisville. And, you know, throughout this last year as librarians, we've been challenged in numerous ways. And one of those was really the concerns of addressing equity and access. And so this is one way. Another time that, you know, especially with some of the things that have gone on, not only with NTI, but in our nation, we had to be thinking about being culturally responsive, thinking about ways for collaborating in some of those difficult topics, part of which was an online environment or a blended hybrid environment or an in-person environment. And so Adrienne was able to start what she called the Read Woke Challenge. And I'm going to let her talk to you about that. I think it's an amazing thing that she did with her high school students, but definitely something that definitely pertains to our upper elementary, middle grades. Also, there's a diversity awareness work group in which some Jefferson County librarians are supporting in order to promote equity. They're facilitating some virtual book discussions. They're collaborating with social studies teachers. And so basically when Book Riot wrote an article about this inclusivity with some of the Jefferson County librarians along with others throughout the state, it really piqued my interest and wanted her to come and talk to the great group, because the title of the Book Riot article, which I've linked on our agenda, is It Takes a Village, and you know how school librarians are a support, and we know that they are. And so at this point, I'm pleased to welcome Adrienne Lane to our great meeting from Jefferson County. Thank you for joining us, and I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Okay, good morning. Thanks for having me. So if I can share my screen, I will go ahead and talk to you about, I'm going to start with the Read Woke Challenge. Can you all see my screen?
We sure can.
Wonderful. It's always so awkward. So here I have my LibGuide address and my email and my Twitter. So if you all need any further information after this, those are some ways you can get in contact with me. But first, the Read Woke Challenge. I found it through reading School Library Journal and also on Twitter, because we all know Twitter is some of the best professional development out there. But I started it maybe 2 school years ago. But on all of my posters and on my LibGuide that I'll link here in a second for you, is I use this quote from the founder, Cicely Lewis, is what is Read Woke? It's a feeling, a form of education, a call to action, and our right as lifelong learners. So essentially, you know, it's more than just black or white, but the Read Woke Challenge encompasses anything to help learners, readers, students, whomever, be more aware of people who are not like them. So for my Read Woke Challenge, I've kind of changed it every year, of course, like we do, to try to make it better. But on my LibGuide, I have an actual page or a tab for the Read Woke Challenge. I have lists of books, and then underline, they link to the catalog so the students can read the description and then place them on hold for checkout, something, of course, I started during NTI, where I would deliver books to students. But other teachers in the district or other librarians in the district have also adopted this as well. Some of them have their lists. It's really cool. They have it by genre, fiction and nonfictions. There are totally 1,000 different ways you could do this to make it, you know, more appealing to students, because I've realized that this long list of names might be overwhelming to some of our kiddos. But one of the cool things that I do is that when students submit their entry for the Read Woke competition, because I have it where they read a certain amount of books by certain deadlines, which is listed down here, you can see. And then I have prizes, most of which I fund myself, of course. And then when they submit their entry, they write just a short little book review, and then I also post that on the website. So we have teachers who get involved, we have students, alumni, everything. So it's really very cool in that. Let's see, something else just to point out about the Read Woke Challenge is that over here where it talks about challenging a social norm, because I do have students who come in sometimes and they don't necessarily want to read you know, like the books of like Black oppression. You know, a term you might have heard is called like Black joy. So I make sure that there are lots of books on the list that are about Black joy or about gay joy, because it's not always something about someone being abused or someone getting bullied. You know, just they want to see characters who are like them, who are just living normal lives, which is what the representation is in most of our books, and why we have this push to make sure that we have diverse books out there. I did not mean to do that. So, and going from that, we have our diversity audit. So this was really cool. We started this in the fall of this school year. We're fortunate in Jefferson County to have district leadership who help us with everything from cataloging to weeding to whatever else we need. But the diversity audit work group was 7 teachers, all ages across the range. We started with a report done from teachingbooks.net. So at first they did an analysis of our entire collection, and then we decided to just chunk out the fiction so it could be more specific to what we were kind of looking for, because we know kids read the nonfiction text, but the fiction is what we're really, really trying to diversify. And as you can see there, it was overall accurate, but we did see some mistakes because it was really nice that they had it several different categories and we were focused on the cultural areas. So if you do have this report run, then, you know, just kind of glance over at some of the ones, the more popular authors, like we had Acevedo that most people are familiar with, and she wasn't listed as Latinx. It was just in the realistic fiction section. So little tweaks like that you're going to need to check on. I listed there the goals of the work group that we had. It's really just to see what was in our collection, because for me, I felt that my library was very diverse because I make sure that I have, you know, all different populations represented. And I was shocked to see, now overall my collection was 22% diverse, but when we broke it down into the other groups, you know, I was very much so lacking on religious diversity, even women diversity, which is odd for our population because we are 70-30% here at Central, 70% female to 30% male. So it was just a really big, wide eye opener, to see the areas that we're lacking and what we need to improve on that. So also Mackin, if you subscribe to that, they also do collection analysis for free. So that's something to look into as well. But it was just, like I said, a very eye-opening and rewarding experience for that. So that is all I have. What questions do we have? Or comments?
I haven't seen any coming in the chat yet. I want to give a shout out to Miss Elaine and brag on her because as she mentioned, you know, Louisville Central is a school that is not your typical demographics in terms of more females than male, which a lot of times we see it skewed a little bit, but that is. So to see the need of wanting to have her collection reflect the students she's serving. And that's something that I know, even going back to the AASL keynote that we all heard when it was here in Louisville, that was one of the things we really talked about. But also a shout out because during the NTI, Jefferson County did not return to in-person learning for high schools until after spring break, which was in April. So their students were literally a year plus of not being in the building, but she did not allow that to be a barrier. One of the things that she did was house calls. She made sure she went out and hand delivered books to her students and learners so that they had that access. So I just want to applaud you, give you a big, huge hand for that. And then we did have had a couple of questions come in the chat, is whether or not the audit work group came up with the 25% goal, or was that a personal one?
That was from the group, and we struggled with that tremendously because, of course, Jefferson County, we have, I don't even know how many schools we have in our district. And some budgets are very healthy. Like, I'm blessed that at Central, my budget is healthy. I pretty much get whatever I need for the students. Other schools, you know, they get literally less than $1,000. So we came up with 25% over a 3 to 5 year period, actually, because we felt that maybe over that time, then schools that don't get the larger budgets could build and develop over time. And also one of the things that we did is we wrote a rationale along with our 3 to 5 year goal. So in hopes that we can present this to principals who don't, want to give us more than $10 a school year, that they could use this to say, hey, this is what we've been working on, this is what we're doing, and this is what we need to get in touch with our student population.
Those collection analytics can be very telling and can definitely be a huge advocacy piece for you as the librarian to go to your site-based council, to go to your administration and ask for that funding. Look, the age of our collection is X amount of years old. Our students weren't even born at that time. We really need to update. We need to provide them with what's relevant, really hitting upon, the diverse populations, diverse topics, the inclusivity that is needed. Definitely. And I'll be honest with you guys, whether your districts are sharing it with you or not, the ESSER grants, ESSER 1, ESSER 2, and now ESSER 3 are coming in. They want us to meet the needs that this past year of NTI and hybrid learning has caused gaps. Take advantage of those grants. They're not going to volunteer, but if you go with a proposal in hand that says, this is how I can meet the needs of our at-risk learners. I want to buy high interest. I want to buy diverse population. There's money there that we've not had in the past, okay? There's opportunities that you can reach out and say, let me go ahead and do this. I want to beef up this part of our collection. So definitely. There's also a couple more that came in. Did the audit work group select the same 5+ tags to analyze, or was that up to each individual librarian?
That was also up to each individual librarian. The work group, it was a wonderful group. We all got along really well. So that was definitely a plus, because we wanted to make sure that this wasn't something that sounded like a mandate, even though we do want every single librarian, because, Jefferson County is super, super diverse. So we wanted to make sure that every school actually took the time to do their audit of the audit collection, but not to, just come down, because when you make people do things, we tend to not want to do them as teachers and librarians and those types of things. So we try to have as much flexibility as possible.
Okay.
And I do
go ahead.
Yeah, also, as you are trying to diversify your collection, we talked in our diversity audit work group that it's about quality and not quantity. Just don't go out and find a bunch of books written by, Hispanic American authors or Asian authors. Make sure that they're quality books, because we don't just want to have the numbers. We want it to be stuff that the kids will actually read and that is representative of those cultures.
Mm-hmm. Would you care to add your LibGuides link into the chat here? And I'll also add it to our sheet where we've been collecting resources from each presenter today. But I'm sure we definitely appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to come in and meet us. But I will say, in talking with Dr. Reynolds and with Janet Lanham and Karen Pruitt and some of the ones in Jefferson County, you all are definitely some of the leading some charge here in the state of Kentucky with this work. And I think a lot, the rest of the state could definitely learn from your information and your all's wisdom that you've already done. And we appreciate you joining us this morning.
Thanks again. Y'all have a good rest of the day.
Thank you. Thank you. Really excited, guys. Yes, I challenge you to take a look at that, and definitely read that article. Not only did it include Adrian, as well as Charity Garnett, who's the elementary librarian at Englehart Elementary. I'd invited her to join us today too, and her schedule just did not permit. But I am proud now. I'm coming to you from the Englehart Elementary Library here in Jefferson County, and just have really been exposed to some phenomenal things going on from the groups of some of the work that they're doing. And so hopefully we'll be able to tap into some of those resources within Jefferson County moving forward in some professional learning endeavors. So, all right, now we are to the point where we're moving along in our schedule to talk about our new Kentucky Academic Standards for Library Media. And so James Allen was scheduled to join us this morning. He is our KDE State Library lead. And unfortunately, he ended up with an overlap with the statewide CIO Summit. Since they weren't able to have that at KISTE this year, it got pushed to this morning, and he wanted to send his regrets for not being able to join us himself. But James did want me to make sure I definitely reached out and thanked all the members of the standards writing teams. And I know we've got several that are on this call that served, and we are very fortunate enough to have some writers from each of those teams with us. Sharon McCubbins and Hannah Ogden were on the elementary writing team. Kelly McDaniel was actually chair of the middle grades writing team, and Amanda Hurley was chair of the high school writing team. And this has literally been a 2-year process of us getting the standards written, of going through all the steps through the Kentucky Board of Ed to get the first reading, to accept public comment, to make some revisions, to go into the second reading. And of course, COVID and everything hit. So it's kind of a little bit further delayed than what we had originally expected. But as Sam mentioned earlier, we do have May 4th as the date for full adoption by the Kentucky Board of Education. So that's a big hoorah and cheer. And more than likely, we will be able to access the library standards on the KDE standards site. That's kystandards.org. If you don't already have it bookmarked, you'll want to. And the expectation to have those on there by early June. Just a couple of points that James asked me to really point out and make sure everybody was aware of. The standards are not required, but that does not mean that they are optional, okay? Elective does not equal optional. So if a school has library media instruction, which all do to some extent, then these are the standards that must be used. It's kind of like with the computer science. Computer science courses aren't required, but if they exist, then the Kentucky Academic Standards for Computer Science are the ones that must be used. The standards are also not designed to be taught in isolation. There are very easy connections with technology standards, with science and social studies standards, and most definitely our English language arts standards. And so especially too with the emphasis on inquiry and the ethical use of information. And so these ladies are going to kind of facilitate some breakout rooms where you can actually go into the breakout room for the grade level where you are associated. You can ask questions. They're going to provide you some insight into what the writing team talked about and discussed. I think most everybody knows these were leveraged from the AASL national standards that came out a couple of years ago that I know a lot of people have been using, but one of the key differences is the fact that we do now have those grade level or grade work group bands for our elementary, middle, and high school learners, to where hopefully they'll allow you to be more focused and intentional in what you're doing. So most everybody that had designated themselves as a work group, I think I've got you, or a breakout room, I've gotten you in there. If not, and you're still hanging out, we will get you moved into one as soon as we get going. And anything else that any of you ladies would like to unmute and say to the whole group before I open up our breakout rooms? All right. Again, James has definitely wanted to say thank you all as somebody who served as a part of the standards team, part of the oversight team. The phenomenal work you guys did as writing teams made it so much easier on us as the oversight when we started kind of looking at pairing everything together and getting it prepped and ready to go to the Kentucky Board of Ed. And so we are super excited. So I think I've got everybody in there. I'm going to open all rooms. And at any point in time, if you're like somebody that's split and you need to switch from the one you're in, I've given that function to where you should be able to do that. But I'll kind of hang out here in the main room, utilize these ladies, ask questions, network with others in your group, learn about professional learning opportunities we've got coming up and ways that you're going to be able to use these standards in your libraries and as an advocate for yourself in your program. Thank you all. Okay. All right, any of those of you kind of still hanging out? If you want me to send you to one, just tell me which one.
Okay, Tara.
Yes.
This is Tammy Hampton, and I just joined because I've been in a second grade classroom. So if you'll kind of fill me in on where we are.
Okay, we are on the point where we're discussing the new library standards. We're going into grade level breakouts. So is elementary probably the most appropriate group for you?
Yes, sounds wonderful.
I'll send you there. Okay, Ellen, I will move you into high school. All right, Nancy, I will send you to middle school. Okay, I'm not hearing you right now. Oh, it's connecting. Okay. Okay, you're not saying it. You're not connected. Yeah, Sandra, maybe try going out and then coming back in because it keeps trying to connect you to audio. Now you're muted. Try again. Unmute.
Okay, can you hear
Okay,
me?
yeah, you're good. Yes, they've got about 2 minutes in their breakout rooms from where we're discussing our new state standards, and then they'll be rejoining us.
Are you Tara?
I am.
Nice
I'm
to meet
here.
you.
Nice to meet you face to face.
No, I'm gonna start there.
All right, we got about a little bit less than 30 seconds left for our breakout rooms to close. And welcome everybody back to the main meeting. All right. Thank you guys for hopefully that. I know that was a short time. That was just a little bit to dabble in the new standards. As we mentioned, they will become officially adopted as the Kentucky Academic Standards for Library Media on May the 4th, included in our state standards website by mid-June. Again, I just want to give a thank you to the writing team members, which I failed to mention. Sam Northern was also on our elementary writing team and was in that group, along with Sharon and Hannah. And then Kelly McDaniel for our middle grades group, and Amanda Hurley. Thanks for joining us in for our high school group. Anybody want to bring anything back to the group before we move on with our agenda? All right, as I said, I'm sure there will be lots more professional learning opportunities around the new standards at summer refresher, in some of your Castle District meetings this upcoming year as we move into utilizing those. And we're super excited. I mean, Kentucky has never had state library standards. We've always just followed national. So to have our own dedicated standards adopted, we're super excited about that, and to be one of those states going forward. All right, now, as you guys have realized, as we've held each of these meetings throughout the year, we've tried to include authors that we thought you would want to hear, but that also you might then want to reach out to bring to your libraries for your learners and students to hear from, to bring in for family literacy nights, summer reading engagements. And we've had some amazing speakers this year. And we are super excited again with partnership from our friends at Scholastic to be able to bring in yet another amazing author to our last spring meeting of this year. We have award-winning author Sandra Markle joining us. She's best known for her books about science and nature that make discovery learning fun. She's written more than 200 books for children, including the American Association for the Advancement of Science Prize for Excellent Book, The Case of the Vanishing Golden Frogs, as well as many others, which when you saw the promotion on our GREC announcement, I know you've all spotted them at our Scholastic book fairs. Kids love them. They're super engaging, super exciting. She's developed science specials for both CNN and PBS. She's worked with National Science Foundation, and she really brings literacy and science together or literacy and social studies together, and offers that co-curricular collaboration that we all are looking for. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to author Sandra Markle for the rest of our meeting this morning. Thank you for joining us.
Well, good morning. And yes, I have to also add that I was a teacher for a number of years, and I was Ms. Whiz on television in Atlanta, Georgia for a number of years. So I love science magic, and when I share with children, I always bring some science magic. So for part of my program today, I'm going to ask you to put on your young thinking, and I want to share with you how to respond to science magic when you see it, because it's just fun, whether you're alone or with a group. It's a nice loud ah and a big wave. We're going to practice it on 3, and then I'm going to show you something for a very special reason. So here we go. On 3, 1, 2, 3, ah. Okay, now I need both hands for everything I'm going to do, so I'm going to hand this over to my cameraman, my husband. You can give him a wave. Hello. He's going to switch it over to
Welcome.
and then we're going to be ready to go. As soon as we get the camera switched to me.
We're seeing you. And if any point in time someone has a question, put it in the chat. I'll be moderating that. And I think Ms. Markle's going to pause a couple of times during the session for us to ask those questions of her.
Okay, are we ready?
No,
he's trying to get it focused on me so he can zoom appropriately. We won't miss a minute though. Let's give it a minute to get here. If not, we're going to just have to go ahead.
Because I can't see.
All right, so here we go. I want to show you one that is just super fun, and then I'll tell you why I'm sharing this one. We're always told that there is oxygen in the air. That's why we need to breathe, but you can't see it, you can't feel it, you can't hear it. So how do we know there really is oxygen in the air? Well, if there is, I can get a reaction with something I'm going to do here. And so what we need is a heat source. That's why my candle is burning. We also need a superfine powder. I'll tell you what it is, but you don't need to remember it. It's called lycopodium powder. And what it really is the tiny little spores from a fern. But I need that superfine powder because if I have a heat source and I have this fine powder and there really is oxygen in the air, well, I think you're going to see a reaction. Get ready to give that science magic response for the first time. 1, 2, 3. Whoa, that just put out my candle flame. We didn't get our nice big pop, but we should have. And I want to share one other thing with you. We can't just have one that didn't give us our big poof of flame. I'm going to show you something else with air. I have a plastic plate. You never want to use the family's best china for this. So a plastic plate left over from a holiday and a paper towel folded up to fit right in the middle. I also need a glass almost full of water. That little space at the top isn't empty, it's full of air. Now, the reason we're talking about this is that you don't realize it because you're so used to it, but air has pressure. It's pushing down on you with about 15 pounds per square inch. It's also pushing in on you. And if you were holding onto something to get your feet off the ground, it'd be pushing up on you. So I always tell the kids, try this outside with your adult partner for the first time. Put your paper towel right in the middle of your plastic plate. Set your glass almost full of water, something level like a picnic table. Then put the whole thing over the top like a lid. Turn it over. Now I have less air pressure inside pushing down than I have below the plate pushing up. So get ready for that science magic response one more time. 1, 2, 3, ah. Pretty cool, huh? Well, I want to show you why I'm holding it straight and why I always tell kids to do with adult partner. Get over your sink and tip it and you get a big splash. But that shows that wasn't a magic trick. That was science making magic. Now I'm going to come around behind all these books, But on the way, I want you to see what's right here in front. One of the reasons I was doing Science Magic is I have done lots of science activity books, lots of STEM-based books, even before we called it STEM. Right there, it's just a little smattering of them. Most of them still in print. I'm headed clear over there to show you the first of 3 kinds of nonfiction that I write. And that is docudrama. Okay, well, docudrama means that these are stories. They're real life adventures that people have experienced, that scientists have experienced while they've been doing research, that I've had a chance to either track them down somewhere in the world, or my favorite ones are when I had a chance to experience them. So you're going to see here that a number of these books are set in Antarctica. I had a chance to go with the National Science Foundation Artists and Writers Program to Antarctica 3 times. In fact, here I am at the South Pole, my explorer shot there. And I was there once in the winter, probably a little bit colder than your winters. I was there for 9 months. When they leave you for the winter, they leave you for 9 months. But we averaged -50 to -70. We hit -129, which is very cold. But in the summertime, I was there twice in the summertime. And in the summertime, it gets up almost above freezing. And I had a chance to camp out with 160,000 Adelie penguins. That's when I worked on growing up wild penguins. All of the pictures in there are mine as well. But it was amazing. I mean, there I am with all these, and they're not the tallest. Those are the emperors. Those are 3 feet tall. They were 2 feet tall, but they didn't know people. And they're on this rocky beach, all to find a mate, to make a nest, to lay their eggs, always 2, and to raise their chicks. Now you would think, rocky beach, how do they make a nest? Well, I could sit there. I didn't have to social distance. They didn't know people, so I could sit right next to them and watch them. And each pair would put pebbles in a circle, and that was their nest. Then, when their chicks had hatched, they would take turns, mom and dad going to sea to feed and bring back food in their belly for the chicks. And every time, every penguin on the way back to their mate would pick up a pebble. Now, it might have been somebody else's nest pebble. I think they moved around a lot. But I learned right there and then that when you really like somebody, you give them a pebble. In fact, the gentleman holding that camera, I don't tell this to the kids, but he and I met in Antarctica, and I did, in fact, give him a pebble. Obviously, it's going to work out. That was about 21 years ago, and we're still going strong. But I did also, about all the research that was going on in Antarctica, all of that went into the docudrama. Well, another story that comes from that, this is the only book that I wrote on the space program. However, I did a lot for NASA as far as educational materials that went out to schools. In the course of that, I had some amazing opportunities. I had a chance to be in the space shuttle model that the pilots and the crew worked in to learn what they were going to be doing. I had a chance to try out the MMU trainer, which was that manned maneuvering unit. I also had a chance when Sally Ride became the first US woman in space. I was invited to be there for the launch, and I was able to be as close as the press could be. The ground shook, the air shook. It was amazing. I also had a chance to stand under the Space Shuttle Challenger when it was being repaired. Every tile on a space shuttle is unique. They are boxes and boxes of extras, and when they come back, they lose some tiles along the way, and then those are replaced. So I was writing and had written a book about the astronaut program, about the space shuttle program. It was finished, it was about to go to print when the Space Shuttle Challenger blew up. Within an hour, the publisher was on the phone saying, we have to kill the book, we have to cancel it. No child is going to want to read that, it's just too traumatic. So I thought, well, I agree. And I put the manuscript away, and a number of months passed. And I was living in Dallas, Texas at the time, and I remember my kids were in school and I was working on dinner, And I tell you that just because it was such a memorable moment. And the phone rang, and this was not cell phone time, this was on the wall phone. And I picked it up, and it was June Scobie, the wife of the pilot of the Challenger. And I get goosebumps still just thinking about it. But as she began to talk, I just was frozen listening. And the key thing she said to me was, and we had never met, she said, you have to get that book published. She said, where would we be if pioneers had stopped going west because somebody died? And it took me 10 years, but the book was published. And so that is a very memorable story that I worked on. Now, I have to also tell you, I've got some new ones coming out that have been really fun to work on. One coming, I believe next fall, is Animals to the Rescue. Now, I had a chance to track down stories all over the world for this one. There's an elephant featured on the cover, that story. But one of the most amazing stories you're going to find in that book is about a woman, Nan Hauser. Now, she is a humpback whale scientist. She's been studying them for like 20 years. And she was this one day on her boat with her team. She was doing the usual behavior studies of humpback whales because they were passing Rarotonga on their migration route. But she had a documentary crew on board that day. They were doing a documentary on her life. And they said, well, there's two big humpback whales. Get in the water, we'll put in the camera, we'll get some more underwater footage. So she got in the water, and she wasn't far from the boat going over to be close to the whales, and the camera was in the water, when this largest of the ones, and she said it was probably 50 feet long and many tons, and suddenly it came at her really fast and bumped her. And she said she was really scared because it could have rammed her really hard, and it looked like it was going to come at her again. It kind of circled around. And before she could even try to get back to her boat, in fact, it reached her, bumped her up on its chin, and pushed her under its big fin, its arm-like pectoral fin. Well, she only had a snorkel. She said she never went in the water with scuba because the bubbles seemed to scare and upset the whales. So she's trying to get a breath of air. And every time she gets a breath, it pushes her underwater again. Now she's really terrified. She has no idea how long this is going on, but she finally gets away from the whale, is swimming towards the boat, but she's exhausted. And her crew is waving and shouting, faster, faster. And she knows, she can just tell she's slowing down. And now the whale comes at her again. But this time it pushes her to the boat, and they pull her out. And then she discovers what was really going on. Not far away from the boat was a 15-foot tiger shark, only second as to the great whites being a threat to swimmers. And that whale had been saving her. They're actually noted for trying to protect seals in the water that way. No one's sure why, but she goes on record as the first person anybody knows about whose life was saved by a whale. So that's one of the stories in there. Another book coming out in the near future, docudrama, is Secrets of the Lost City. Now, this, in fact, you're going to see one that's close to this is going to be on Discovery Channel. It's sort of the adult version of this. And what the story is that there has been for, well, centuries, there's been rumors of a lost city, some unknown group of people in Honduras in the dense La Mesquita rainforest. And I mean, people trekked in there, nobody found it. And Steve Elkins had been fascinated. He had funded and been on a couple of different missions trying to find this city. And then technology came along, LiDAR, which could use light to actually penetrate forests. If you've ever stood under a big tree, you've seen their little peaks of sunlight. Well, LiDAR flown over a jungle area in swaths as if you were mowing the yard can actually penetrate with laser pulses. Then the computer somehow takes all of this, gets rid of the bits that seemed like a cloud, which are extra little leaf bouncing off these laser pulses, and then connect all the dots and see what's on the ground. Well, they saw what looked like possibly city ruins in what was a deep valley with mountains on every side except one way in and out where a river cut through, perfect for an ancient civilization. So with help from the different groups, Nat Geo being one of them, that would fund this expedition, they went in, a group of scientists, archaeologists, and so forth, and some Honduran soldiers for guards, because among other things, there's a lot of wildlife there. And they went into where they thought it was. Well, they actually they camped near it. They had to go through thick mud, across a stream, up a slippery slope with all plants on it to where the ruin should be. And Steve said he was disappointed because all he saw was more trees and vines, but the archaeologist was all excited. He said, this is the ruins of a city. Well, they thought they had no aha moment for a documentary to go on television. And then one of the TV cameramen stubbed his toe. And what they found was, in fact, the top of a carved head of a jaguar. As they began to excavate carefully, kind of think of them digging up dinosaur bones, the same sort of thing, they found 400 and some artifacts, some of them as big stone chairs that they had to be able to live with two people, all kinds of carved things. It really was amazing. Now, one of the things that I have in the book that's so amazing to me is the archaeologist said he's been in remote sites everywhere, Europe, South America, Africa, and this is the only place in the world he has ever been that there was no plastic. What does that tell you about the world? Well, my book actually focuses on telling that, and then the second expedition, which was by the RAP team, the Rapid Assessment Program, sent out by a conservation group to find out what animals are living there, and if they're rare and endangered, should that place be protected? They had 10 days to do that, and the story of their investigation, like a forensic team for science, is awesome. And what they found, well, I won't tell you. You're going to have to read that. Okay, so we've been talking about docudrama. It's one of the three kinds of nonfiction I write. I want to go around over here and get a few questions if we have any. And then I'm going to show you my book closet. Kids always love that, and I think you will too. All the books I've published, plus some special souvenirs. Do we have any questions?
I have a question for you. So you've talked about some amazing adventures and writing opportunities that you've had. Which one would you kind of categorize as your most exciting when you were doing the research in order to have authentic writing within your book?
Well, it had to be when I was in Antarctica while I was camping out with the penguins. In fact, I was there with two women scientists, and so there were just three of us, and the 160,000 plus the Delhi penguins, but we were nowhere close to any kind of a base. McMurdo Station being the closest was a helicopter ride away. And so all of a sudden this storm came up. Now they have what they call Hermes. It's like a hurricane, and the air becomes so full of blowing snow and ice that it's a whiteout, and the winds are hugely strong. So we had our pup tents was where we had sleeping bags, and we had what looked like a Conestoga wagon, kind of solid up halfway with arches of metal and canvas on the top. That was where we had our cooking stove and so forth, our supplies. So the storm came up, and we knew they couldn't come get us. We in fact had radioed in. They said, we can't come get you. And so we linked arms and got out to what was now shredded pup tents and got our sleeping bags back into this sort of Conestoga wagon with the solid base, one at a time. And by the time we had them all in there, all three of us, the top was starting to be shredded as well. And so basically I had on this heavy gear. The only thing I took off was my big heavy boots. I crawled in my sleeping bag with all this gear on, pulled it up over my head so my breath would kind of help warm the air. And for 12 hours, the snow blew, the wind blew, but I survived because here I am telling you the story. So that was far and away the most exciting to share. Do we have another question?
let's say if you, so where do you come up with these ideas? I mean, you obviously must have a passion for science, for STEM, and absolutely wanting to engage in ongoing learning. So where does the majority of your ideas come from?
It comes from a variety of places. One of the things is that I keep journals. I'm always looking around. The world, in my opinion, is just full of amazing things to be learning about. And I keep notes on that. And I think, well, what if, and I wonder if, and there those ideas come. But you know, I actually get some things from the children in this series, which I'll be talking about in a little bit, the What If We Had series. I had so many emails and letters about what if we had animal skin, or what if we had animal coats. And so I combined all this and what if you had animal scales and other animal coats. So sometimes it's actually ideas that kids say, I want a book about. And teachers as well, I hear from, and librarians as well, say, we need a book on something. And oftentimes it's because I think, I really want an excuse to find out about that. In fact, I've been talking to experts in Uganda about giraffes, that they're working on trying to save this group of Nubian giraffes, which are very endangered, and doing it in a very creative way, which they're actually moving them via truck and ferry boat to another location. That's going to make an exciting story, the Great Giraffe Rescue. Do we have another question?
You mentioned getting ideas from librarians, from students. Talk to us about author visits, either in person or virtual, that you offer, to where I know several of our librarians, like I mentioned, you know, do family engagement reading nights, science nights, summer reading programs. Give them a little information about some of those things you offer.
Absolutely. In fact, I've been surprised how my calendar has been quite full. I do a 30-minute, a 45-minute, and special ones by request. But not only during the day ones, I've also been doing quite a few of the evening ones. I did, as I said, one just very recently last week. They were able to have, I think they had 189 folks join them. And for that, I do quite a bit of science magic, because after all, what is more fun than seeing something surprising? And I work in also then telling the stories, and usually include a little read aloud, many times from this guy over here. This makes a fun read aloud, and we always do a peek in the book closet, which I'm going to give you in just a minute. So yes, I do that. Always happy to be doing more of those. And the nice thing about the virtual ones is I'm less expensive, because I don't have to travel, and it's also easier. So it's been a lot of fun. Awesome. Did you have another question? Because I've got one I'm going to share.
There's none in the chat, but I will let anybody else unmute that might have questions for you.
I have a question.
Hi.
Okay. Hi. So I'm a librarian, and I have two kiddos. My son, he's a third grader, and this, like what you've been doing and writing all these books and traveling all these places, like that's what he wants to do. Like he got his inspiration from Wildcats, but like ever since he was like 2, he's loved animals. And just within the last couple of years, like he's dead set on, he wants to travel the world and learn about animals and make and write stories and stuff. So like, what would be your words of wisdom for him or any other children that are interested in doing stuff like that?
And I have to, sir, before I answer that, tell you that really what got me started, he's been inspired by that television program. But when I was in about 5th grade, there were no science textbooks in those days, I might add. There were no science textbooks until after Sputnik was launched. The Russians launched Sputnik. And then the US thought, well, maybe our children ought to be learning more science. And so in my hometown, Foster, Ohio, they hired one science teacher, Mr. Vance, who went to each of the 5 schools one day a week. And I lived for Mr. Vance Day, because he came, since there were no textbooks, with boxes of things for us to experiment with and try out. So one of the first things I would say is he needs to just do not only a lot of reading, but he needs to be trying out things, be encouraging to work with him. So what it is, I always say, check with your adult partner, make sure it's safe for you to try. But he's also not too young to be doing books. He can do online these days. But you know, when I was in 3rd grade, my teacher took paper and folded it like this, stapled it, and made a little book. I actually wrote my first book, did my first cover, I might add, and some of my first illustrations were in there, because I have illustrated some of my books. So it's a chance to be thinking through, well, what's going to make a good page turner? I don't care whether it's nonfiction or fiction, I've written both, but it needs to be exciting all the way from the beginning to the end, needs to share information. He's also not too young to be interviewing. That's a real skill. It's something that he needs to think about. What does he need to find out from that person? He could be interviewing grandpa. He could be interviewing the local veterinarian. He could be interviewing somebody that works in landscaping and trees. And think about, what does he need to find out? Do some background information research, and then set up and talk to that person. People are really kind about doing that. And that's such good experience. And that, again, is just a wonderful learning opportunity. I wish you very well. I certainly think you're never too young to start. I have to show you my first book that was ever published. It is Exploring Winter. In those days, they were very text heavy, and all pictures in all nonfiction books were black and white. Those are, in fact, my illustrations. But I wanted nonfiction to be every bit as exciting, excuse me, as fiction, and to be full color. And certainly now it is. Did we have one more question? Otherwise, we're going to go see the book closet. We have one more?
I think we're ready for the book closet.
All right, let's go. You're in my home. So I would say the kids don't get lost. Stick with me. We're going to go right around the corner. I will rush ahead when we get to my guest bedroom and throw open the door of the book closet. Get ready for Science Magic Hour Wave. It's well worth it. Here we go. Stick with me. We're going to go right around the corner. And we're almost there. And get ready to see it. The book closet. Here we go. Whoa.
Wow.
I do think it deserves a wow. That's over 200 different titles. And a lot of special souvenirs. Home right in on that one next to the dragon. That's A Mother's Journey. That's one of my most honored books. And that's in Korean. My books are in Korean, Afrikaans, Chinese, Japanese, German, Spanish, Finnish, English, and a whole lot more languages. So they're shared with children all over the world. Lots of different ones.
So would you say that one is the most special book to you,
No.
or is there another one?
That one is really very special to me because, again, it's part of my Antarctic story. There on the floor, that big sheet of paper is what a book looks like before the pages are cut apart and put together. That's about 8 to 10 pages of The Great Monkey Rescue. And there in the middle, my favorite animal, the elephant. That's why it has a crown. My newest book, The Great Bear Rescue, about the Gobi bears, the only bears that live only in the Gobi Desert. They're down to a population of 40, of which only 8 of those are females, but the scientists are working to help them out. Look what we have in the filing cabinet. Down there we have a great white shark, but a stuffed one, the only way to have one in your book closet. And going up, we're going to see, what if you could sniff like, oh, right there. He's right. We need to not miss that. It's one of my early readers. I wish I was a lion. What would you do if you were a lion cub? And up here we have, what if you could sniff like a shark? Right in front of that are real shark teeth. Next to that, the black lump is a lava bomb from an active volcano, Mount Erebus in Antarctica. And in that frame is one hair. A scientist gave that to me. It's a woolly mammoth hair. It's a 10,000-year-old hair. So looking around a little more, lots and lots. Luckily, there are some spaces left. But it's a good point to tell you that I write about 5 to 6 books a year. Now, saying that, I spend about 6 months on a book writing it. You should be thinking the math doesn't add up, but it's because I multitask. I'm researching one while I'm outlining another, while I am writing another. I have editors like children have teachers. So I'm revising another one, as the editor says, more here, less here, change that. And then I'm working on finding the pictures, because I do always do the photo search, working with the illustrator, if it's going to be illustrated. And then there's a whole team that goes into action to be sure that we picked out just the right cover, that we've got everything laid out in the most attractive way. All those things go together. So we're going to go back and I'm going to talk to you about Faction, another kind of nonfiction I write. So here we go, coming back. And around to the faction books. Now, as I showed you in the book closet, A Mother's Journey, and that is a very special book to me. This was one that I discovered the story while I was in Antarctica and then tracked down more and wrote it later. But faction stories are ones that all the facts in the story are true, but we don't know every bit that happened. And so there's story that goes into putting it all together. And part of these faction books, many times for me, I always want all my books to be good, read aloud, but a faction books particularly should just be able to be read and sound good and roll off your tongue. And this one, for example, is what I call poetic prose. Let me show you the first page of this one, and I'll tell you what it says. I happen to know it by heart. So on the first page, it says, in the rosy glow of the setting sun, when the Antarctic winter had just begun, the female emperor penguin pushed out her egg. It was the very first egg she had ever laid. And so the story continues to what is a surprising and happy ending. Just in brief, the story is that we've always heard for years about the male emperor penguins and how they all huddle together through the winter with the egg, the one egg on their feet, incubating it. But what do the females do? This tells you that the females actually have to go miles and miles across the ice, belly crawling and waddling to get to open water. They have to feed and stay away from leopard seals and things that could kill them. And at just the right moment, know it's time to come back. And of course, the ice has changed. Now somehow they have to find their way. They have to get back to their mate just after that chick has hatched so they can bring up food from their belly to feed that chick. It's all a pretty amazing thing that happens. One of my favorite stories in this, remember I like elephants especially, is Thirsty, Thirsty Elephants. This is a special story to tell you a couple of things about it. First of all, it's based on a true story. Again, we don't know everything that happens, so I've kind of alluded to some of the things. I simply call the elephant in this story Grandma Elephant. The scientist gave her the name Big Mama. And in the story, there's been a terrible drought. I'm talking a 7-year-long drought that has gone on. And it has been so bad that there's now everything pretty much dried up. And so all the animals are having to gather together to try to get some water. And there's just not enough water for elephants. And so, in fact, some of the elephants in other herds have been dying. So far, her herd had been doing okay. They even had to dig in a spot that had water, got a little slurp, but it wasn't enough for elephants. They also ate juicy leaves, even the baby, trying to get a little bit of liquid, not enough water for elephants. Things were really getting bad. In fact, it was so bad, there was not much but dust. And then Big Mama remembered when she was a cat, there had been a terrible drought. This is the true part. And she remembered where her herd had gone to find water. And so she went, hoping, I would think, that in fact it would work out. And in fact, it does. And they find water. Now, it took me the usual 6 months to interview the experts, to write the story, but it took 3 years for the artists to do these amazing illustrations. So we're about to go to print, and my editor calls me and says, well, in the back, we want to tell the true story, and is Big Mama still alive? And I thought, she was 55 years old when this happened. This is 3 years later. I don't know, and I don't really want to find out. But I called my expert, and this book came out in 2018. I kept up. And in fact, Big Mama was not only still alive then, Big Mama is still alive now. In fact, her herd is 40 elephants strong, the largest herd in the wildlife park where she lives in Africa. So that's faction. that happens. And sometimes faction is just totally fun, like hush up and hibernate. Now, all the facts about bears hibernating or going into the special dormant state that they do is true, but the bears talk, which is kind of a good clue that this is faction. And I wanted to share just a little bit of this because it is also totally fun. And a lot of times when I do virtual visits, this is the one particularly for younger groups that I read. Mama bear lifts her head and looks at the red leaves blowing in the wind. I see winter coming, she says. It's time to hibernate. But Mama, baby bear says, I can't hibernate yet. I'm hungry. So Mama bear grunts and says, well, I guess we could eat a little while longer before we hibernate. So she takes him to where there are bushes with berries, and they munch until she hears the geese flying. I hear winter coming, she says. It's time to hibernate. But Mama, baby bear says, I can't hibernate yet. I'm thirsty. And so they go down to the lake for a drink. But when they get there, baby bear spies a fish and tries to catch it and misses and misses and misses and misses. And then he says, I think that fish was in a hurry to hibernate. No, Mama bear says, fish don't hibernate, neither do voles or rabbits. No fair, says baby bear. Why can't I have to hibernate? Because, Mama bear says, in the winter there won't be any berries for bears to eat. There won't be any fish. The lake will be frozen over. I'll find food somewhere, baby bear says, and stamps his feet. No, there's another reason winter's not for baby bears, Mama bear said. That's because hungry wolves don't hibernate, and neither do mountain lions. And I won't be there to protect you. Where will you be? Baby bear asked. I'll be hibernating, Mama bear said. And off she goes. Well, baby bear waits for just a minute or two. You see the eyes in the woods. I asked the illustrator to add those. And then he rushes after her. And when he gets to the tree, she nudges him inside and says, now, we're going to curl up and hibernate. And so they do, but only for a second or two, because baby bear said, but Mama, I can't hibernate. This bed's too hard. And so they crawl out. And Mama bear paws more leaves into the den until the air fills with snow. Oh, now it really is winter coming, she said. It is time to hibernate. But Mama, baby bear said, I can't hibernate yet. I have to go say goodbye to the voles and the owls and the rabbits. I'll hurry and come back real fast. And then Mama bear has just one word to say, enough. And so baby bear comes back and she nudges him into the den again. And nose to nose with him, she says, now hush up and hibernate till spring. And so with the wind to their backs, they curl up together to hibernate, but not for long. Snore, 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 grunt. Mama bear, baby bear whispers in her ear, what is it, dear? And he says, is it spring yet? And then I always share the quick little quiz. There's good back matter in these to share about hibernation and bears and other animals that hibernate. But I always love to share this quick quiz with the kids. And so I'll share it with you. Could you hibernate like a bear? Could you go without eating anything for 100 days? A bear does. Could you go without drinking anything for about 100 days? A bear does. Could you skip peeing or pooing for about 100 days? A bear does. So maybe you couldn't hibernate like a bear. Well, I want to do a few more questions, and then I want to talk about the last kind of nonfiction that I like to write. Did we have any other questions from the folks there? I've got some more from the kids have shared that I'll share.
Yeah, so I just keep seeing all the different opportunities for librarians and teachers to use these books that you have to not only integrate the informational literacy standards, to definitely look at our science standards, but just talk about some of the STEM, blowing up things in general, but just the writing process. What does, you mentioned your days, you're researching and you're, doing outlines. What does a day look like for you, or like starting a book from beginning to end, the whole writing process?
Okay, well, it's kind of two different things, but a day for me looks like I start early in the morning. We start with coffee outside about 6 o'clock, and then I come in and my creative time is in the morning. So when I'm doing the writing part, like when I'm doing poetic prose, or even when I'm doing any of the text, that is in the morning. And I do always read everything out loud over and over again. I'm always saying to my cameraman, my husband, I'm not talking to you, I'm just reading out loud. Because to me, the language has to flow out. If I'm putting in a word, it should be there. If I'm leaving out a word, it should be there. It just gets to that point where it feels good because the language rolls out. And that's the way I get to the text. Now I do plan, there's sort of a skeleton, a format to the different kinds of books. This that I'm going to be getting to shortly is going to be a very simple format. And then we have an intro, and we have a fact page, and we have an imagining page. And again, we get to a bit of back matter at the end, but there's always that format. So anyways, I'm writing in the morning, being creative. Then I get a little break time. Then in the afternoon is when I try to work in doing the research time, unless it's a call to somebody in another country where I sometimes even have to get up in the middle of the night to be able to do that. And later in the afternoon, as I'm working on maybe some more kinds of basic sort of outlining things. And about the middle of the afternoon, I have a pet cat that everybody always wants to know, do I have a pet? The kids do. And I say, yes, I have Bo, who is a Maine Coon. He's about a 23-pound cat. And I work on a laptop, so I work everywhere, just however the mood strikes me. And he always seeks me out and climbs and jumps right on top of the computer, which means stop working and play with the cat, which I gladly do. So all of that is part of my day. Now, the process for a book is going to be that I'm usually working from a proposal as opposed to the whole written book. So then I'm investing time in, after I've thought through what really needs to be there and worked out with the publisher, what they might also like included, then I'm doing my research part, then I'm doing the writing part, and then we do the revision part. And when there's illustrators involved, and again, I'll show you one of these, then I'm coming up with the ideas. And first I will see black and white sketches, and I'm checking that part to see if there's something that needs to be scientifically correct. I'm checking that part. And I should add that I never Google anything that's in my books. I am going to experts. And whether it's these or the docudrama ones or the faction ones, then also the text goes to be vetted by the expert. I want to be sure that what I'm sharing with children is absolutely correct. And sometimes a scientist will say, oh, well, no, we've learned something else since then, because these books do happen over time. And so something will have to be changed. And we always make sure that it's absolutely as current as possible. So that is part of the process. Now, there's a whole team that chooses the covers. I have to tell you, if you have a What If You Had Animal Teeth book and it has a beaver child on the cover, you have a collector's item, because that's how it first came out. And then the marketing team thought, whoa, I think we could probably get more interest in the book if it had a rattlesnake child on the cover. And so the cover was changed. And that's happened to several of my books that way. So very good question. It's a whole process and takes a whole team to make it happen. And I should say, I don't always get to pick the illustrator. In fact, pretty much never. I might get to have a choice between a couple of them. Howard McWilliam and I have done something like, I don't know, 9, 10, 12 books now. And we've got a nice working relationship going. In fact, some of the times, the things I choose for the imagining, I think, what would Howard come up with for that? And have a good time with that. Do we have
I love the idea that you said that you went straight to the scientist and the source, because a lot of times as librarians, you know, this day and age, we are trying to really invoke those media literacy skills and teach students about reputable sites and sources and where to find information. And, you know, and I love that you have that as a living example. So.
Well, and diversity is important. I don't know if anybody has noticed that even in these books, I am always very conscious. We have children, I'm not going to come right to the right one, but we have children that are in wheelchairs, we have children with glasses, we have children of all ethnicities, we have children with everything you could possibly imagine to be representing them so that they can feel part of it. And I've even received pictures, photos from kids that say, I look like that in your book. And I love that. I love that they see themselves in what I'm doing. So that's great.
Awesome.
And I do also make sure that even in the ones, the docudrama ones, there's good women scientists that work there too.
You've hit on two of the topics we've already discussed in our session this morning about the women empowerment and appreciating those that have been from within our state. We've talked about inclusivity and, you know, equity access in our libraries and our students being able to see themselves represented in our collection. So you're just summing up things we've already discussed this morning.
Well, I have to tell you a real special experience I had, because I've been saying, I've been at this a while, I've actually been writing full-time for 43 years. And I've always said all along, I want to inspire children to think about science as possible careers. Well, when I was working on a book that was called the Great Bat Rescue. And one of the women scientists that I got a hold of for that, actually it was the case of the vanishing little brown bats. So as I got a hold of the scientist for this woman, she was starting to tell me about the fact that she'd had to go out in the winter. She'd never done any kind of climbing, and she was going to have to climb down this ice fall into this cave. And then she said, oh, it's you. And I thought, what are we talking about here? We were on the phone. And she said, no, she said, I remember your books. You inspired me to think about science. So I know there's at least one out there that I inspired to have a science career. And I take that one up as very important and valuable to me.
Excellent.
So are we ready to hear about function?
Sure.
That's what I call the third kind of science that I write. And librarians, you probably know me best for these books. Last June, I think it was, so it's quite a while ago now, there were 2.4 or 2.6 million of these in print. And I must say that, in fact, I can't always read these books. I can certainly read them in English because I write them in English. I speak some Spanish, so I can read some of these books that are translated into Spanish, but I don't speak a word of Chinese, so I don't know where my name is on the cover. And the fun thing is, while the pictures are the same, I don't know if they say the same thing. The facts culturally could be different, but how wonderful that children are getting to share these books with other children all over the world. And it's a good chance to share with you that besides the fact that they are fun as well as fact-filled, is that it started right here. And this is a chance to tell you that, for me at least, as I've kind of been implying before, books often start for me with an aha moment. This whole series started with this book when my granddaughter Allison was about to start kindergarten, and she tripped and she fell down and she knocked out her 2 front teeth. Now, luckily they were baby teeth, so we imagined together, just for fun, well, what if you got rattlesnake teeth? What if you got some other kind of teeth? And so I simply called the book 2 Front Teeth. But happily, Scholastic saw that there were a lot of really interesting animal adaptations, interesting parts that kids could have fun imagining having, if just for a day. And I hear from a lot of teachers and librarians that these books are a great chance to have a burst of information that's just the right amount for a little beginning research, and then something fun to imagine. And as I said, I get lots of emails and letters from kids, lots of pictures of them imagining themselves. Actually, in this book, I think the one I hear about most is probably this guy, the great white shark. And I actually write a lot of different books that tend to have repeating themes. I have done animal predators, great white sharks. I've done outside and inside sharks. I've done tough toothy baby sharks. And of course, I've got sharks in here. And so all of those kind of repeating I have experts around the world that I go back to, like for bears, I have Harry Reynolds in Alaska, and I always call him up. I say, Harry, I need to check with you again on something on grizzly bears. And these guys and women have been so useful and helpful in keeping things going. I have a favorite animal. Now, I make lists as I do this series, and I try not to repeat my animals. I want the very best animal for the feature. I might have a cousin. There's a vampire bat in that book. And do we have the tongue book? I don't know if we do have the tongue book. Nope, I don't. But in any case, in the tongue book, it's got a bat on the cover with a really super long tongue. So they're cousins. But I have a favorite animal. You already saw it in the book closet. And I always share with kids, I put it in 3 of these books. So it's in the tooth book because they have amazing teeth. I never tell them what it is until after we get through this. And I say it's in the ear book because they have the biggest ears of any animal. And it's on the cover of the nose book because of that amazing trunk. And here's another chance to share with them that I get my information whenever I can by experiencing. So when I was doing the nose book, I had a chance to meet baby Mike. Now, baby Mike is a 6-month-old Asian elephant, which meant he was no taller than the fronts of my kitchen cabinets, and he was just learning to use his trunk. It was all floppy. A baby elephant's trunk is all floppy at first. So I went in his pen, I thought, well, I'll be able to touch him. He won't reach out to me. But as I reached out to him, he wrapped his trunk around my hand, reaching out to me. I thought, oh, that's so cute. And then I discovered that little rascal was using the end of his trunk like fingers and taking my ring off my finger and doing a very good job of it. So you see, I learned firsthand that an elephant uses their trunk like a whole hand and like fingers. So that was pretty cool. So the series has grown. The dinosaur book, not there. Oh, there's the bat with a really super long tongue. That's totally cool. And of course, dinosaurs has been hugely popular. Everybody loves dinosaurs. And I also have, the series has expanded. You saw this one in the book closet. And it's expanded in 2 ways. It's not only what if you could, the books are a bit bigger, get more pictures, and it has a little more information. I always like to show kids my favorite in this book is the flying fish. And there we have the burst of information, a bigger picture to imagine, and then we get to have a little more discovery. Now, when I talked to Dr. John Davenport in England about the flying fish that he'd been studying for like 20 years, he said, be sure and point out that longer lower tail. Because he said, if you push, like in your bathtub, it's harder to push in water than it is in air. So they get up close to the surface. There's a swordfish or a tarpon chasing them. And they start wiggling that super fast, which launches them into the air. And they spread those fins to be like wings. Now, they go 328 feet, but not all in one push. Gravity starts bringing them back closer to the surface. That part dips in first, wiggles again real fast, and they keep on going. Well, pretty amazing. So that has now been followed by, what if you could spy like a narwhal and have other amazing animal superpowers? So there's some pretty cool ones in there as well. I wanted to share one last bit here before we go on, and I'm going to do a little finale of Science Magic because you have to have that. I too also write fiction. This is a middle grade novel. Gasparilla's Gold is a pirate treasure hunt, but also they're saving an endangered Florida panther in this story. That came out 2 years ago. And I also wanted to share one last question that the children from Plymell Elementary had asked me, a couple of them actually. It said in here, how did you feel when your first book was accepted? Remember, that was Exploring Winter. I had been doing a lot of magazine articles. You may even have seen I did Hands-on Minds on Science column for Instructor Magazine for about 10 years. But this was my first book to have published. And how did I feel? I felt, whoa! And I got balloons and I put up a big banner and I celebrated. So that was definitely true. And then, of course, one of the kindergartners asked, would you like to be a cat? Which was a chance to be able to share, absolutely, because my cat Bo has a very good life. But I want to share one last bit of science magic with you, and that is, because you're in my kitchen, we're going to use my microwave, and we're going to need for this a paper plate and a paper towel and a bar of ivory soap. Now, before I put it in 1 minute on high, I should tell you that by now in my program, the children would already have seen a couple of different activities where we discovered things about molecules and about air. And I'm going to put it in, as I said, 1 minute on high. When it gets down to the last 10 seconds, like all kids do, and you should too, we're going to count down that last 10 seconds to the big reveal. Here we go. Right into the middle. 1 minute on high. Now, what's happening and why? We have a bar of ivory soap because ivory soap has a lot of air molecules, those little building blocks that make up everything, trapped by a lot of soap molecules. Now, as they're being bombarded by the microwaves, the air molecules start to heat up. And when they do, they start to wiggle. It's probably like all of you. You've been sitting for a while. Maybe you've got a little wiggle going on too. Adults get to wiggle as well as kids. And so the more they get bombarded and the more they heat up, the more they wiggle. Oh yeah, they're wiggling. If you hear, it's also starting to smell like bath time. We're about getting ready to count down the last 10 seconds. Get ready, don't fail to do it now. Here we go, and 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ah, the big wave. Wow, that's science magic. Amazing. Man,
Super cool.
Now that we've seen this, you're going to be thinking, oh, what if we had even more fun together? And we will have more fun together every time you read and share one of my books. So wherever you are, I want you to give one last science magic on away for science magic and for reading. So thank you. I really love being with all of you and be sharing and bringing the joy of all this to your readers. Bye-bye.
We're super glad you had joined us today. We did have one question come in, and that's how do you choose the experts that you consult?
Ah, good question. How do I choose the experts? I do a lot of tracking down. I usually do a lot of reading in scientific journals and find somebody that seems key for that topic. And then I say to them, who else do I need to talk to? And the door opens and away we go. Sometimes a really amazing way. I one time had a chance to have the door open and I had a chance to interview J. Presper Eckert, who was one of the inventors and builders of the early computers. And through him, I then interviewed the 3 Nobel Prize winners who had invented the transistor. So the experts lead to other experts and are amazing experiences, people I am honored to have talked to. So thank you.
Thank you. One last thing. I know that you do a monthly like subscription newsletter or STEM writing inclusion series that I'd like for you just to briefly, I've included the sample that you provided for them to see, but if you could just give them a little bit of information about that, because again, not everybody is a science expert or a writing expert. And so I know you offer that bridge that's available.
I do. It's absolutely free. It's called Markle's Book Explorers. We're now in pretty much every state and have lots of folks. It's a monthly newsletter that I pick a theme for the month. And then I have not just my books, I have all kinds of resources and things that can be links to for that theme. And then I supply 1, 2, 3 free activities that are reproducible that you can then use with children either to be investigating writing. I think the one this last month was in fact the one about writing, Super Tusk, thinking about having a Super Tusk and being that character, or sometimes they really are STEM related. I always wanted to be sure that there's so much fun that the kids don't realize they've learned a little something in the process. But that is simply email me at sandramarkle@yahoo.com and you'll be on the list to get that every month.
Thank you again, Sandra, for joining us this morning. It has been so much fun. I just love your passion and enthusiasm for not only literacy, but also science and writing. And we appreciate you joining us. Thanks again.
It was a pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Phenomenal way to round out our spring GREC LMS Network meeting. I thank you all for joining in with us today. I know we've had lots of attendees from throughout the state on the call today. Remember, once you sign in, your attendance certificates will be emailed, and then a recording of today's session will be available in approximately a week, and that will be available just for the upcoming month, and then it will go away. One last announcement is to make sure you tune in to KYL chat. Make sure you check out your spring Castle District meetings information. And then one last announcement is that the ALA Relief Fund, COVID Library Relief Fund applications are up. There's going to be awarding of $1.25 million total to public school, academic, and tribal libraries across the U.S. Who have experienced hardships due to the past year. Grants can range between $30,000 to $50,000. And then on April 22nd, they're hosting an informational session about that. On our questions document, I've included information on how you can register in advance for the webinar, and then the application. So if you have any other questions about that, please reach out. Again, thank you all for attending all of our networks this year. We're super thankful to GREC for allowing us to hold these. Information about next year's events will be shared once school returns in the fall. Thank you all again, and hope you have a great day and a phenomenal rest of the school year.